Frogbeat Blog.
Well, hello. Welcome to episode 38 of the Frogbit Blog podcast. This week I'm talking about the Extinction Rebellion. Len is on. I've also got Mark on talking about his childhood fear of trees and all my usual features. So please listen on and I hope you enjoy the show.
Frogbeat Blog. The Frogbeat Blog.
Right, get this. In Spain, coal miners are really happy about losing their jobs. Spain is to shut down most of its coal mines by the end of the year after government and unions struck a deal which will mean 250 million euro. Hang on, am I doing Italian? Sorry, Spain, but anyway, I'll do my own accent. 250 million euros will be invested in mining regions over the next decade. Pedro Sanchez's new left-wing administration has moved quickly on environmental policy, abolishing a controversial sunshine tax, on the solar industry and announcing the launch of Spain's long-delayed national climate plan next month. Unions hailed the mining deal, which covers Spain's privately owned pits, as a model agreement. It mixes early retirement for miners over 48 with environmental restoration work in pit communities and reskilling schemes for cutting-edge green industry. Green industries. You see, that's how to close down an industry. I was quite involved in the miners' strike in the UK in the 80s, and the pit closures there actually destroyed communities that have never recovered. And had the Thatcher government back then put money into the community and retrained the workforce like the Spanish have, well, I could have understood it then. But you know what they were doing? They were busy selling off the family silver, nationalising all the nationalised industries, giving tax cuts to the rich, and they were also raking it in from North Sea oil at the time, but giving it all away in tax cuts. And it's so short-sighted, isn't it? We can change industry to be more environmentally friendly, but we have to pay a cost, and a cost that will benefit both the environment and the workforce that we're affecting. It's not rocket science, is it? And the guy went on to say, Montserrat Mir, the Spanish Confederal Secretary for the European Trade Union Congress, said the just transition model could be applied elsewhere. Spain can export this deal as an example of good practice. We have to show that it's possible to follow the Paris Agreement without damaging people's livelihoods. We don't need to choose between a job and protecting the environment. It's possible to have both. Well said. I mean, look at America. You know, America, Trump has just given $2 trillion away to the richest 1%. Yep, he could have used that money to close down polluting industries, close down the coal industry, pay for early retirement, pay for retraining, and put money into the communities. It's a matter of priorities. It's a matter where you want to put your money. It is possible. Right, get this. 1 in 8 Britons are now vegetarian or vegan, according to a report on food shopping that underlies a revolution in the UK's eating habits. A further 21% claim to be flexitarian, where a large vegetable-based diet, big carrots and swedes, where a largely vegetable-based diet is supplemented occasionally with meat. Oh, is that what a flexitarian is? I thought a flexitarian was a vegetarian who did yoga. Anyway, which means a third of UK consumers have deliberately reduced the amount of meat they eat or removed it from their diet entirely. A third of UK consumers. Well done. Right, well, in case you've missed it, there's been a launch of a campaign recently called Extinction Rebellion. It's Extinction Rebellion is being organised by a group called Rising Up, which has been around since 2016. And amongst other things that they say is they want to create a national conversation about the ecological crisis and climate breakdown, including that our families, communities, society and the state are facing an existential threat. This includes to discuss our demands with the government and political parties. Our overall ambition is an international rebellion that helps humanity to turn quickly onto a course that is compatible with life on Earth. However, we are unattached to this outcome. We also make these valiant efforts to lead an honourable life in this time of grief, destruction and unravelling. And what they're going to say, we are in an ecological crisis which includes mass species extinction. Our course is to set societal collapse, the killing of millions and possibly billions of people. Human extinction is possible, the future is bleak, and our children are not safe. Our government isn't acting in accordance with what science and history tells us. Therefore, our government is criminally negligent. We have a moral duty to rebel, whatever our politics. Social science shows us that peaceful civil disobedience is an effective way to bring about change. Our lives have meaning when we follow our conscience and are willing to make sacrifices to protect what we love. We ask others who feel the same to join our peaceful rebellion. Now, there's lots of different ways of getting involved. You know, you can support it financially, but more importantly, I think it's important to become part of the movement. There are people willing to partake in civil disobedience. Not everyone has to, but some people are willing to. Some people are willing to get arrested, lose their liberty, lose their job. While I'm here sat on my fat ass, I might lose my voice, and that's about it. But no, there are actions underway and they're spreading across the UK. You know, there's climate breakdown, there's extinction of millions of other species, which will eventually lead to our own extinction. And we need to adopt sustainable ways of living, because an unsustainable way of living, believe it or not, it's unsustainable, isn't it? And this isn't some far-out paranoid alarmist stuff, you know. You don't have to dig very deep to find out that this is all science-based. And there's all sorts of ways you can get involved, and you can find out through the usual social media channels by just searching for Extinction Rebellion. And stuff's all already happening all over the country, so please try and get involved. And me and Dawn were talking about this. Well, you know, things like, why aren't the Green Party doing better in the UK? And there's a couple of reasons. I think the first thing is the first past the post system, which doesn't help. But we humans have got a problem, haven't we? There's a fundamental flaw in the human psyche that finds it hard to project into the future with stuff like this. You know, most city dwellers won't notice much difference. Maybe hotter summers, more storms, but it's not that apparent. I mean, take me for instance. I moved out onto the edge of the countryside 6 years ago, and I see lots more nature. Have lovely nature-filled bike rides into work. Even the hot summer last year was nice. You know, you never get to sit out in the northeast much in summer, but last year we could. And anyway, you'd be forgiven for thinking, well, it's not that bad, is it? Things will be fine. But they won't. We are attacking our life support system from so many different directions, and we are nearly at tipping point. And when it tips, there'll be no turning back, and we won't be able to reverse engineer our way out of this. And we must act. We must do what we can in our own lives. We must organise, create awareness, demand change. But we also must expect our governments to act responsibly and act in our interest and bring in laws so that we can start undoing the damage, because industry won't act until it's forced to, and only governments do that. And the government here in the UK had a chance to make tentative steps in the budget 2 weeks ago. Well, let's go over to the House of Commons and listen to what the Chancellor had to say about the whole thing.
So here it is, the 2018 budgie. budget. I always like that joke. Tax cuts for the well-off again. A £3 billion tax break for oil and gas companies in the North Sea. And as for mitigating climate change, money for renewable energy, that kind of thing. Sorry, I forgot. Well, it's not bloody important, is it?
So, one more time, Extinction Rebellion, check it out and think about getting involved.
Oh yeah, it's Lanigan. It's sexy Lanigan. Oh yeah.
Right, so Len is back in, and we had a very interesting conversation last time about AI in farming, and you briefly touched on bees. That sounds a bit weird, but you briefly brought up bees, and now you've been doing some research on bees. Tell us about what you found about the bees, Len.
Well, they are lovely little furry things, and everyone
Yes.
loves bees, don't we? The thing is that modern farming methods that's currently going is harming the little bees, isn't it? So we're talking about the use of pesticides and things like that is harming usually the queen bee's reproductive sort of capabilities, which is problematic.
Yes.
As obviously they help to pollinate a lot of our food, I guess, is obviously an issue. The research I've been looking into is just about the Netherlands. They're one of the biggest producers of produce in the world, and bees are responsible for pollinating 80% of the food sources that come out of the Netherlands. So they're a bit worried about losing out a lot of the bee populations, because obviously that means their food will drop dramatically, their exports will drop dramatically. So they're trying to come up with some slightly mad solutions.
Because they have been, up to now, they've been hiring them in, haven't they? You can borrow bees. I think there's big bee farms or something. But again, the problem with that is that there's so many bees in one place that there's infection and all sorts of problems going on. But then you hire them, do you? Is that what happens at the moment? They hire. I think there's a load of farms where you hire them in for a bit, and then they go, and they pollinate, and then they bugger off.
I've made the mistake of just looking mostly on the technology side of things, the solutions, rather than or from a technology point of view, rather than the natural point of view, which I kind of prefer. Your
well, yes,
there,
but like I said, there is problems with that. Is that again, it's not natural that these companies are producing millions and millions of bees to live together, because then there's all sorts of problems with disease, bees disease.
Well, in the end, that's not a very natural environment for them to be in, is it?
No.
It should be smaller.
No, because bees are incredibly intelligent. I don't know if I talked about this, but there's videos on YouTube of bees actually playing bee football and getting balls into a hole. They can teach them. They've got a stick with a pretend bee on the end, and the bee copies what it's doing.
I couldn't believe it.
Because intelligence is all about, and they've realised that animal intelligence is all about the size of brain relative to the body. Because we looked at Alex the parrot, who's got a tiny brain, but he's got the same cognitive abilities as monkeys and 5-year-old kids.
Incredible.
So you think bees, they could be just as intelligent. But you're going to talk. You've been looking at robot bees.
Yeah, it's the automation. I mean, I think, again, this is like bit of a worst case scenario that the Netherlands are looking into, that if there was a dramatic drop in bee population and it was unstoppable, then they have to come up with a plan to either partially replace or fully replace the bee populations. And their instant reaction to that would be a slightly sort of Black Mirror-esque sci-fi response, which is robotic bees or drones. And again, very much in their infancy right now, so they're much larger, much slower than regular bees, a little bit less productive, but again, this is your first model.
Yes.
If you're going to compare it to, I always like to use the analogy of using phones is probably the best way to look at it. So you're talking about the big clunky phone, suitcase phone of the 80s right now.
Yes.
What's going to happen in 5-10 years when you get the iPhone model?
But nano bees, could they be that small?
Yeah, I mean, they could be tiny. Yeah.
It's funny because I wrote a song in the 90s about the dystopian future, and I actually put a line there about listen for the buzz of wet electric bees. It was idea it was a buzz because it was raining on them and they were shorting. But that was in the 90s, and I never actually, it was sort of one of those ironic, jokey things. I never actually thought that we'd be sat here 20 years later talking about...
You should have been sci-fi right now, that's the thing,
Yeah. So... What's the plan then to develop?
Yeah, so this should be fully automated. So they're sent out into either the farms or the I guess the very large polytunnels and things like that to then start doing the jobs of the bees and cross pollinating all of the plants to make sure that they're surviving. I mean, the interesting thing is obviously there's a huge cost involved. Technical challenges are vast, but then would also need probably machines to automate a machine to build these machines. And how do you control them? What happens if they get hacked?
Yes, killer bees.
Killer bees.
Yeah. The interesting thing, though, I mean, one of the problems with this, of course, is if we find the technological solution, there might not be the political will to save the bees as it is, because then, if we've got greenhouses or factories where we're creating our food, and you've got electric bees, robot bees in there, that's one thing. You wouldn't necessarily want real bees in there. Yeah. Drone bees might actually do better, but in the wider world, then politicians and the political will might be, we've got our food, but of course bees do a lot more than just pollinate our food, doesn't it? It's all the wildlife. And one very worrying fact that I found out this week about Costa Rica, where they've got like pristine forests and they're really good on the environment, is even there where the forests are untouched, they've found a 60% decrease in the number of insects, which is mad.
Terrifying.
Which is mad, and because that's obviously happening across the world, and that's a place that's untouched in many ways, because they are so important part of the ecosystem, and we're not going to actually realise that until they've gone. That they break everything down. It's
maybe we should be making robots to help the bees, not to replace the bees. That could be a way of looking at it, I guess.
But this is going to happen then, isn't it? Presumably,
but it's working. I mean, they're quite large at the moment, and they're not in your mind's eye. You're probably thinking they're quite scary looking robotic metal bees in the shape of a bee. They're not. They look like a small Wright brothers craft with like very light wings that are flying around. They're very sort of light and not damaging.
They're not
could never hurt anybody
going in.
No.
So and I suppose, like you said, we might not even see these because presumably as agriculture develops, it will be under. It'll be like in greenhouses and more in factories and things like that, so they will operate within that environment. But the issue is, and is there a book you've read where the bees get out, the dystopian future?
Fully enough, there's, like I said, the TV show Black Mirror has an entire episode where they become a little bit controlled by an outside party and end up being used for assassinations, which is a wild idea, and I don't think the ones that come out of the Netherlands could be even vaguely capable of doing something as such. But it's, again, with all technology, there's always going to be a risk.
There is, isn't there? Everything that we talk about, there's a dystopian and a utopian.
Absolutely. That's the same for every aspect of life, isn't it? Really?
Yes, and we've got to think positive, haven't we? We have got to think.
Time's running out.
We have got to. Because we've got to create that positive. We do it in everyday life, and we do it like I do with the students that I teach. You've got to have a positive mindset because that will give out positivity. And if we don't have that positive mindset, if we don't, then there's no hope, is there?
Absolutely. Keep it rolling. Keep the message passing down to the kids, and that will be all fine.
Yes, and that is a good point to stop there. So thank you very much again for taking the time and the effort to come in, Len. And
Always
we will
a pleasure.
speak soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.
It's sexy Len again. Ooh, yeah. It's Len again. Ooh, yeah, it's Len again.
I think this sketch should be called Ain't Karma a Bitch, because I don't know if you saw it a while back. There's a footage of a huntswoman beating a huntsab with a riding crop, and she hit him 17 times, and it was all on video. And of course police said, there's not enough evidence. Yeah, well, people took out a private prosecution. Anyway, guess what? This is what it says in the paper. A huntswoman who was facing assault charges for whipping an animal rights activist with a riding crop has died after being thrown from her horse. Jane Goering, also known as Jane Miller, is believed to have fallen during a drag hunt. We regret to inform you that Jane Goring was tragically killed whilst out dragging yesterday at Lee. Dragging? Was she dressed as a man or something? At the time of her death, Ms. Goring, 57, was facing a private prosecution for assault after she was filmed horsewhipping environmental campaigner Stephen Medhurst last year. It's very dangerous, this fox hunting, isn't it? I mean, firstly, it's dangerous for the foxes, and secondly, it's dangerous for the riders, because they're always falling off and dying, Why don't they ban it? Oh, yes, it is banned, isn't it? Just the police can't be bothered to do anything about it. Why is that? Would it be because the people that go out fox hunting are lords, ladies, judges, higher-ranking police officers, vicars, that kind of people? Because they're never prosecuted, are they? Maybe there's something in that.
Good, I hope it hurt, I hope it hurt. Ha, 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 ooh, good, I hope it hurt, I hope it hurt a lot. Hey!
Right, well, there's been a fair few hunters dying in Italy, and one's quite young, and some people said, well, you shouldn't laugh about a young death. Fair enough. And there was all this Facebook argument about it. Should you be laughing? Because some people were, and some people were going, oh, no, it's awful that an 18-year-old has died. But if you're considered old enough to have a gun and kill defenceless animals and put yourself in the vicinity of other people with guns, by the sounds of it, most of whom are pissed, the hunters, not the guns, obviously pissed. Well, it's sort of Darwinism in accent, isn't it? Did you notice I just said Darwinism in accent instead of Darwinism in action? And I was just about to go into a funny accent, so I'm sure I was doing it in my subconscious there. But I meant Darwinism, I can't even say it. Darwinism in action. The third fatal shooting of a 20-year-old Italian man who was mistaken for a wild boar has provoked a political outcry from animal rights groups demanding an immediate ban on hunting. Marco Tosti, himself a hunter, was killed by a companion early Saturday as they combed the mountains in search of their prey, about 40 miles north of Rome. Italian media reports said Tosti was shot when his 70-year-old friend heard a noise, mistook him for a wild boar and fired at him. Tosti was shot in the abdomen and later died in hospital. Some friend, eh? Do you often get mistaken for a wild boar? Only at dinner parties, darling. It was the third hunting tragedy in Italy in the past month. A 56-year-old hunter died near Velletri, south of Rome, last week, and an 18-year-old was killed in North Italy at the end of September. Hang on, the third hunting tragedy, it says. No, it's a tragedy for defenceless animals. For the hunters that got shot, I say...
Oh, good, I hope it hurt, I hope it hurt, ha, 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 ha. Oh, good, I hope it hurt, I hope it hurt a lot. Hey!
If you ever think your life's hard work or tough, it could be worse. You could be a cicada. Cicada, you know, one of them things that you hear making the funny noises. Listen on. When these flying insects emerge from the soil en masse, a parasitic predator rises with them. The mysterious fungus, Massospora cicinada, something like that, lies dormant among the cicada nymphs, waiting for up to 17 years until the insects mature and take flight. That's when things get really weird. Imagine waiting 17 years for a nymph. Anyway, over the course of the cicada's extremely short adult life, Cicadina spreads through its body, replacing its insides with spores and filaments called mycelia. We know all about mycelia, don't we, folk? Then, once the body is nearly totally consumed, it splits in half. The tissues attaching abdomen to thorax rupture, causing the abdomen to fall off and reveal a mass of spores. The dismantled cicadas can still fly, though, which is why mycologists refer to them as flying salt shakers of death. Nice. With their abdomens decapitated and spores exposed, they fly around, spreading their spores to other cicadas. But the really messed up part of the fungus-cicada relationship is that the fungus also releases a psychoactive chemical, psilocybin and cathinone, into the cicada's system, dosing the dying insect with a psychedelic speedball of hallucinogenic and hallucinogen and amphetamine. Well, actually, it doesn't sound too bad way to go, does it? I mean, if you're going to be taken over from the inside by a mushroom, at least because it could happen to all of us, at least get one that gets you high while you die. But seriously, if you ever want a reason to wonder why I think everything has a consciousness, to me, that looks completely intentional behaviour from a fungus, doesn't it? It gets inside a creature, grows, the creature splits in half and then spreads the fungus everywhere else so it can get into other creatures. Isn't that intelligent behaviour? Well, that leads nicely on to...
Nature is clever. It's really, really clever. Nature is clever.
Now, I've mentioned Alex the Parrot a couple of times. After I'd first heard about him a while back, I did an article on him, and then I decided to buy the book, Alex and Me, by Irene Pepperberg. And it's a very enjoyable and easy read if you don't know much about the story. So I'm not going to do a spoilers here, but if you if you like that kind of thing, it's a very, very interesting book. And Irene Pepperberg was a remarkable woman because she was trying to do original research in the 60s and onwards in what was very much a man's world. And not only that, but someone who believed in the innate intelligence of animals and spent her life's work trying to prove it. And she did. That's the amazing thing. She did, especially about birds. The idea that something with a brain the size of a walnut could perform complex cognitive tasks and not only repeat learned words but develop an understanding of language Well, she moved the goalposts on how we think about animals with that one. She showed that Alex could do things that were previously believed to be unique to humans, and her studies were all scientifically sound. It wasn't just wishful thinking, yeah. Alex could do these cognitive tests that put him in the same category as apes and 5-year-old kids. And he showed himself to have sophisticated numerical abilities that once thought only humans with language could do. You know, and he had skill in abstract thought. He also fell for the same optical illusions that humans do. Again, showing similarities between humans and other animals and birds, even though our evolutionary paths diverged 280 million years ago. And birds have no cerebral cortex like mammals do. And that was the thing, apparently, the cerebral cortex that was meant to give us our special powers. Well, Alex wasn't meant to be able to handle concepts such as same and different, bigger and smaller. But he did. And this is the section that Pepperbird wrote towards the end of the book that I find the most moving. Alex was proving a profound truth. Brains may look different, and there may be a spectrum of ability that is determined by anatomical distances. Anatomical. What is it? Anatomical. I'll start that again. Alex was proving a profound truth. Brains may look different, and there may be a spectrum of ability that is determined by anatomical differences, but brains and intelligence are a universally shared trait in nature. The capacity varies, but the building blocks are the same. Or, as punk band Toxic Doxic would say,
Nature is clever, it's so fucking clever, cleverer than Trevor. Though I don't know a Trevor, that's all I'm known for clever. Actually, there's Weber, and never, I'm fucking vegan never. But nature is clever, it's really, really clever. Nature is clever, it's really, really clever. Nature is clever, it's really, really clever.
Right, well, you know, last episode I was talking about how I thought, I was told as a kid that if you drank too much lemonade, you turned into a dandelion head and you got blown away. Well, I asked people to send in their childhood experiences. And Mark, remember Mark the minimalist who's been on a couple of times? Well, he actually got in touch. And because he works not far away, I thought rather than reading out what he said, I've invited him in and he's just popped in to tell us about his childhood thing, which is actually quite traumatic, isn't it, Mark? Anyway, hi Mark, how are you doing, mate?
Hello, I'm all right. How are you?
I'm very good. How's the conversion to non-meat eating going? Is it going all right?
It's going good. It's going good. I've started going down to do a little bit more veganism as well. Yeah, I've started to try. Well, I don't eat cheese anyway, but I've started to cut out dairy milk from me cups of tea and things like that. But I still have normal dairy milk on me. Not normal. I still have cow milk on me cereal. I can't quite go with soy milk on Weetabix yet. But in me cups of coffee, me cups of tea, I'm starting to have non-dairy milk. So I'm on me way to veganism.
Brilliant, because it is all a question of degree, isn't it? You know, not everyone is going to be a strict vegan, but I think the more we all try and do move towards eating less and less meat and going more and more dairy, the better, really. So brilliant for that. Yeah, now, your childhood thing sounds quite traumatic to me. What was it?
Well, when I was a kid, I was told that when I was eating an apple and I took a bite a bit too big and I saw the seeds in the middle of the apple core, I was told by, I can't remember, a family member, might have been a grandparent or a
Do you want to name and shame them now?
I can't, it was a long time ago, but I was under 5 and they told us that if I eat the seeds, even accidentally, just one seed, I'll turn into a tree. So I was born in 1989, so this was in the early 90s when Mothercare had a bit of a point of display. They had a big fiberglass tree in all the stalls, which had its own mechanical face, which its mouth moved and its eyes blinked and things like that. And I think if you went near it, there was a motion.
That sounds quite scary. Anyway, they forget. Don't the little kids get scared by big things? Anyway, you saw this plastic tree.
So whenever I saw this fiberglass tree, when I first set eyes on it, I thought it was meant to be like a children's story corner thing,
right?
And I was terrified because with it having the face and being a tree, I thought that is a kid
as a child. That's horrific.
Eating an apple core, and that's what happened to him. So So yeah, I freaked out and was terrified of this tree.
And then it said, that is awful. And then you said in your email, you didn't help that I didn't speak till 5, so I couldn't communicate. So were you so freaked out that you didn't speak till 5, or were you just a really quiet kid?
Oh, no, I was just a very quiet kid. I've got an older sister who's, but I didn't get a word in edgeways, basically.
So you just kept quiet?
She talked for us. Yeah, they thought that when I was a kid, they thought I couldn't hear and that I was going to wear. In fact, I said my first word in the...
What was it? Hate tree.
It was hair.
Oh,
so
right.
I was in the apparently I can't remember this, but I was in the waiting room to the speech therapist meetings that I was going to every week to try and get us to talk and see whether it was an issue with being deaf or mute.
But
or
no, you just didn't fancy talking.
Yeah,
Maybe
just
the
had
good
nothing
thing
to say.
the good thing is though, you didn't. You could have actually turned out to be like a lumberjack or something. Someone that actually wanted to. It could have affected you, couldn't you? Could have spent your life chopping down trees.
Yeah.
But you've actually turned into a bit of a tree hugger.
Yeah, I like trees. In fact, when I almost dropped out of uni halfway through and went to do become a tree surgeon, but it didn't work out financially viable. So it
And
didn't happen.
actually, you're in with a lumberjack shirt on today, so maybe that's,
I am, yes.
yeah.
The checky shirt crew.
Yeah.
That's
Oh
not
well,
part
so
of
it didn't damage you long term.
No,
right.
but yeah, I eat apples again now.
Good. So apples and trees, you're cured.
Yes.
And you speak.
Yes, I can talk.
Oh,
No,
brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, lovely. Thank you for popping in, Mark, and I'm sure we'll hear from you soon. Thanks very much,
Well,
mate.
thanks. See ya.
The Trumpet Blog.
And the latest scores are in.
PTSD 24. No more PTSD 76.
Yep, newly published results from a phase 2 clinical trial into the efficacy of MDMA-assisted psychotherapy in treating post-traumatic stress disorder have revealed striking success, with 76% of the subjects not meeting the standard clinical criteria for PTSD 12 months after receiving the treatment. That's amazing, isn't it? 76%, yeah? The trial comprised 28 subjects, all with clinically diagnosed PTSD that had persisted for an average of almost 30 years, despite attempts with other conventional treatments, including drugs and psychotherapy. Yep. The final stage before MDMA for PTSD can become an FDA-approved treatment is an expansive phase 3 trials. Yep. And that'll be between 200 and 300 people across 16 different sites in the USA, Canada and Israel. It should take up to 2 years to complete this final stage, with ultimate FDA approval on track for something like 2021 if all goes well. I've got PTSD. Can I join in? Seriously though, that's amazing that people are finally going to get an effective drug to help them. One that they've been denied for decades now because it's a party drug and we're not allowed to give people these drugs, apparently.
Is it okay to talk about drugs? Is it okay? Gonna do it anyway. Is it okay?
Right, well, I'm repeating a sketch. I don't often do this, but I did it last year for Remembrance Day, and I remember how it came about because I'd just rejoined Facebook after a few years' absence, and coming up to Remembrance Day, there was loads of sort of like images that people were trying to get likes for of poppies and stuff. And it's fair enough. People, I think it's quite nice when people show members of their family that died in the wars and stuff, you know. But there was people like, I saw one picture, a picture they got off the internet, and they're surrounded with poppies and put, please share this and get this to 1,000 likes, lol. And it was all a bit me. And I just think, you know, the whole poppy thing and the whole poppy shaming if people aren't wearing one has gone a bit weird. And I think the whole thing's really missing the point. And I saw a picture the other day of some ugly white bloke in Britain doing a Nazi salute while wearing a poppy. Doing a Nazi salute while wearing a poppy. Okay. And now I'm not talking about Donald Trump. This was in England. You know, we have them here too. You know, those people that think most pressing problems in the world right now are caused by little brown people. Yeah, of course they are. And there was also an article in today's paper. There are at least 13,000 ex-soldiers left homeless after leaving the military, and almost all have PTSD. That's 13,000 ex-soldiers homeless, with PTSD. So next time you hear the Tories go on about the military and how wonderful they are and how very militaristic and how great it is to support our military, bear that in mind, okay? And if you're a soldier, they will use you and then abandon you, and it's always been this way, hasn't it? Anyway, back to the sketch. Enjoy.
Anyway, here I am, about to go over the top of the trench, probably to face certain death, and I'm wondering if my death won't be in vain. There's loads of working class fellas on the other side, and we're about to go and kill each other for our own respective colonial oppressive empires. Anyway, I hope my great-great-great-great-grandchildren will remember me in the future. You know, I know TV hasn't been invented yet, but I can picture a time when computer machines means everyone can talk to each other without having to talk to each other. And I reckon it'll be called something like Tinternet. And I hope my great-great-great-grandchild, who'll probably be called Chantel, will be posting on the thing, which is a book of faces, probably called Facebook or something like that, and stick up a tacky picture and say, give this picture 1,000 likes, lol, and try and make themselves look incredibly popular. Then I know my death will not have been in vain, because that's what I'm stuck in this trench for, so that my great-great-great-great-grandchild can get 1,000 likes on Facebook. And not only that, my death will not have been in vain if my Chantel can take pictures of her dinner to show people what she's had for lunch. And when airplanes are used to take people all over the world, my Chantel will be able to tell people that I'm waiting at an airport for my plane. My death will not have been in vain. And this is what I'm fighting for. This is what I'm facing certain death to go over the top in the trenches for. That my Chantel will be able to look at short videos of cats doing daft things. That's what me and these German lads are killing each other for. And I also predict sometime in the future there'll be another internet phone thing called something like Snapchat, that my great teenage grandson, Brooklyn, will be able to take photographs of his cock and send them to unsuspecting teenage girls in the mistaken belief that will make him fancy him a bit more. Now that's a cause worth dying for. And hopefully in the future my descendants will spend their poppy days, because there'll be this thing called poppy days, I know this, I can see into the future. They'll spend their poppy day looking out for people that aren't wearing poppies and try and shame them because they refuse to join in. That's the kind of freedom I'm fighting for. I hope they hunt out the traitors and quislings like the dogs that they are and get them sacked or shame them on Facebook, because that's a cause worth dying for. And in centuries' time, hopefully, we will still be being ruled by the same upper-class people and royal families that are busy sending to us to our deaths now. And even when there's going to be another war in 30 years after this one, I predict that. And after that, they'll build cheap, affordable homes and a health service for all, with national railways and electricity and water all paid for by our taxes. And then I predict 70 years after that, the same upper classes can then sell them off to make themselves and their mates richer. And when a fella comes along and tries to renationalise them, we can call him a traitor and a communist and say he's a threat to society. And in the 1930s, newspapers like the Daily Mail can support the Nazis, but everyone will forget that and cheer when later on they pick on foreigners and poor people. That's a future worth fighting for, isn't it? That's why I'm going over the top now, because that's the future I'm fighting for.